Hi there, and welcome to this podcast. My name is Jonathan Foust. I will be leading the following meditation and then introducing the following talk. This talk is a recast. It's something fantastic from years ago that I pulled out of the archives for you. Before we begin, a big thank you to the Insight Meditation community of Washington, to Glenn Harrison for producing and streaming this. Also, a very big thank you to our Mindful Movement leader, Rita Moran, and to our Mindful Dialogue leader, Ray Manioki. At 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can join Rita for Mindful Movement, and after this talk, approximately 8:35, you can join Ray for Mindful Dialogue, an opportunity to check in with like-minded people and get a sense of your practice, how other people respond to life and to the talk. Thank you guys for all you do. Also, just to let you know, this is all offered freely just to ensure that no one is denied access to these practices and these teachings. And in addition to that, I have a newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter. It's got a compendium of talks, my best photographs from the month, etc. I think that's it. I will have a day-long retreat coming up in January on mindful intention, kind of our annual mindful intention, thinking about the year ahead process, and I'll have that information up on my website soon. For now, let's take some time to gather our attention here in one place. So if you like, you might want to stretch out in any way that feels good. Maybe rotate your shoulders, kind of rolling back. It's a great way to kind of free up your scapulae. And as you're ready, let your eyes close. And in your own time, begin now to slow down your breath. And explore what it's like to not only slow down your breath, but to kind of smooth out your breath. And feel that pause between the inhalation and the exhalation. And notice how this awareness of breath begins to draw your attention from the outer world to a heightened sense of the inner world. Over the next 3 breaths, how much more can you feel the breath on the inside? And notice the effect. And now, if you would, release control of the breath. Let your attention move into observation of the breath. Again, where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? Maybe it's the nostrils or the septum. Maybe it's a sense of the breath in the belly, or just a general sense of the respiration. Without controlling the breath, just feel the body breathing all by itself. And you might explore softening the breath. Letting go on the out-breath. Sensing from the inside now the expression on your face melting away, all little micro expressions softening. Your face now like the face of a marble statue. Relax the inside of your mouth, the lips and the tongue. The jaw softening away from the skull. Is it possible to smooth the forehead, to soften the little muscles around the eyes? Relaxing and relaxing even more. Could you imagine your arms heavy, like heavy drapes hanging from your shoulders? And can you feel from the shoulder joints down through the elbows, the elbows down through the wrists, awareness now flooding into the palms, flooding into the thumbs and fingers, the backs of the hands. And as you sense from the inside out, can you detect any pulse or tingling or vibration or subtle energy here in the palms? Sensing through your lower back and the buttocks, the belly and lower abdomen, sensing from the inside. The floor of the pelvis and the hip joints. I'm feeling now the length and the volume of your legs, the hip joints down through the knees, the knees down through the ankles. The tops of the feet and the toes. And sensing now the soles of the feet and the heels. What could soften inside right now? What could relax? What could let go? And in this sense of softening, can you sense what it is that is aware? This quality of the observer, this quality of recognizing and knowing what is here. No effort required. Just this simple quality of noticing. And you might, over these remaining minutes, from time to time, refresh your sense of the breath, or maybe sound, these touchstones into here and now, arriving and re-arriving. If your mind has wandered, is it possible to observe that moment of awakening with an inner sense of discovery, of wonder? You are again awake. And can you explore as you re-arrive a sense of pleasure in this re-arriving, the softening inside, feeling again the muscles of your face relaxed, the inside of your mouth, the weight of the arms and the palms of the hands, here and now. And can you notice what is happening right now? You might have a sense of foreground and background, the breath or sounds in the foreground, and in the background, this perception of everything that is changing. And you might explore in these minutes awareness open 360 degrees, awake to what is changing. Noticing what is changing and noticing if it's possible to let things be. To be aware of the flow and to feel at the same time a quality of spacious, open, allowing. Imagine, if you wish, in this remaining minute, that you could suspend all effort and simply relax and rest in presence. And you might explore the following. In the absence of effort, what do you feel inside? What do you notice? Gently now deepening your breath, notice the quality of presence. What has shifted in the last 15 minutes of resting here, now? You might, with your eyes closed, let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right. Let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good for you, and in your own time, gently beginning your transition. Welcome back. And please enjoy the following talk from the vast archives of Jonathan Foust.
And welcome. It's a story I heard a while back of a woman who was jogging along a trail right along the beach. She stumbled and fell and caught herself before she hit the bottom, and was holding on to a root for dear life. Just terrified, started screaming. And there were some people on the beach who saw her, and they said, "It's okay, you can let go." And she wasn't able to. She was just terrified. And they said, "Really, really, you can just let go. You're going to be okay." And again, she was so frozen in fear, she just found herself just hanging on for dear life to this root. And finally, a guy came jogging over, and he came up to her and said, "It's really okay. You can let go." And she goes, "No, I'm scared. I'm scared." And then she looked over and she realized that their heads were equal, and she was actually about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. I think we all have experiences like that, where from the outside it's very, very clear you can let go, but internally, because we don't know, we can't. We're just holding on for dear life. The title of this talk is "You Can't Stop the Surf, but You Can Surf the Waves." And what I'd like to talk about is the art of clear seeing, the art of allowing yourself to be on the wave of the moment, about the art of inner listening, of how to be on whatever wave you're riding, and then the art of responding to the moment with wisdom and with loving presence. I'm here at an undisclosed location in a basement in New England. It is along the beach, and I've spent a lot of time in the water. I feel so privileged and blessed to have had this time. And being in the water is something I love. I love being in the surf, which is not possible right now because I'm actually on Cape Cod, and the sharks are out patrolling now. Someone once said, you give someone a surfboard, you'll distract them for the day, teach them to surf, and they'll never go back to work again. Being in contact with water just really, really works for me. And Tara and I have been swimming every day. And we swim along a section of the coast in the bay here. And it's different every day. Sometimes the water's flat occasionally. Quite often it's choppy. Sometimes there are whitecaps. Sometimes the current comes from the bay and the water is really warm. It's almost so warm you want to go into deeper water to cool off. And then the next day the current will come from the ocean and it's absolutely ice cold. Sometimes it's clear, and sometimes literally swimming through seaweed, swimming through gunk. Sometimes it's low tide, sometimes it's high tide, but pretty much no matter what, we go out there and swim. And it's kind of a nice little metaphor, because in the same way, you get up every morning and you move into your day, no matter what the variables are. And some days, like in the past many months, the conditions are extraordinary. They're challenging. They're difficult. And what you have to do is to recognize, well, what exactly is happening, and sense if you can actually make room for it. And then to really pause and investigate the most wise, the most compassionate way through a difficult time. And then to proceed with wisdom and with thoughtfulness and with compassion. And what I'd like to do is to break this down a little bit, break these steps down. Because while these are indeed challenging times we're in, they're not going to stop. There will be moments when you have clear seas and times when it'll be really scary. So as I thought about this, I was thinking about a long, long time ago. I worked with someone as part of a team who was, how do I put this? I think you could say high performance and high maintenance. It was someone who would quite often would feel upset. And their upset was often quite public and urgent. And quite often their upset was something that this person felt had to be processed right now as a group before we could move on to the next thing. Now, I've mentioned this before that in my marriage to someone I dearly love, Tara will look at me sometimes with a particular look in her eye, which I know well, and she'll say, "We need to talk." And I will think, I know this is good for me. I know I'll learn something from this. I know I'll be glad I went through this, but there is nothing in me right now that wants to have this conversation with you. And quite often it would be a very similar theme, that what this person would bring up would be very, very challenging. Ultimately, it would be helpful. I would learn things sometimes, but it was often just a grueling, messy process. And I would imagine there are times in your life when someone says, we need to talk, we need to stop and deal with this right now. And you may find that kind of oh no experience inside. Or that oh no experience may be related to a lot of different things. Maybe your job is over. You've decided I can't do this job any longer. Or maybe someone decided that for you. Maybe there's a relationship that may be difficult or coming to an end. Maybe you get sick at a really inconvenient time. Maybe you have chronic pain at an inconvenient time. Maybe there's an event showing up in your life that you've been dreading and is finally here. Or maybe there's a disturbing thought that overtakes you, or a strong emotion like grief or anger or sadness or depression, something hard to be with. That experience, that oh no experience, is that sense that something is wrong. Either something's wrong with you or something's wrong out there. And it's translated well as the clench. You experience that clench inside. And the bad news is that that clench happens all the time, and quite often it's an unseen, unfelt clench. It's just happening so subtly you don't even know it, but for some reason you start getting irritable, or you start withdrawing, or you start getting angry, or you find yourself kind of unable to feel. One thing this practice does is it starts to reveal the subtlety of that clench as well as the opening. The more I slow down, the more I begin to notice this constant stimulus response experience going on all the time. And quite often I find myself judging myself for being reactive. But here's a key, really helped me, is that I am fully entitled to my first reaction. And I found giving myself permission to oh, I'm having my first reaction. Let's examine this. It gave me a lot of room. So we recognize what's happening, and then we have to ask ourselves, can I make room for this? Here's the wave. Can I get on the wave, or do I need to duck? So when this person erupted one time and demanded a staff meeting, I noticed myself going into a classic reaction, the oh no reaction. I found myself shutting down, going into maintenance mode, thinking, okay, this is probably going to take the rest of the morning, so in my head I'm rescheduling my day and figuring out when I can write that piece I was supposed to write, and mostly feeling dread. Knowing that it's the right thing to do, it's the good thing to do, to stop what I'm doing and pay attention to this strong emotional volcano, but not wanting it. This teaching of our inner response, that inner clench, is so powerful. At the most fundamental level, it's just undifferentiated energy inside. It's just particles and waves. Nothing good, nothing bad. It's just there. But inevitably, something arises as a formation inside which is either going to you'll respond internally, I like this and I want more, or this is bad and I want to nuke it and make sure it goes away. So imagine you get a letter, and there's a letter from a lawyer that says, a distant relative just left you money. Or you get a letter from the IRS saying, we need to talk. Clench. You smell your favorite meal being made. Expanse. You get in your car and the car won't start. Clench. Remember a professor of mine once telling me about when he was driving into New York City with his girlfriend, and in the middle of the George Washington Bridge, the car just stopped. And he turned to her and he said, right now, I am resenting the expectations set upon me as an American male to figure all this out and handle this right now. This feeling tone, which is referred to as Vedana, it arises in reactivity to life. And if you really, really pay attention to it, it's this alive orgasm. Orgasm. Well, it is an orgasm, but it's also an alive organism. You're closing, you're shutting down, you're opening, you're expanding, and the expanding is fun, isn't it? When we're not aware of that organism responding, we're just reacting to life, quite often unconsciously. It's unseen, it's unfelt. We don't know why, but we're reacting. It's very interesting how this connection between mind and body gets more and more refined the more you practice meditation, and chances are you've noticed that. When you feel physical pain, there are these tissue damaging sensing nerve cells that they fire and they send signals to the spinal cord and up to the brain. Then the brain responds to pain and then works to cope with those pain signals. But the interesting thing is how you may feel pain, but your brain is just guessing what's happening in the outside world. The sense of perception is sort of inference. Oh, here's unpleasantness. Oh, it must be connected to this. So again, unconscious reactivity is just anticipatory pain. It's our negativity bias, where we're just scanning for danger all the time, anticipating pain. And so when an event occurs, we move into an unconscious reaction. And so in this event, here's an eruption, stop everything. I have feelings, I want to process these feelings. My response was, oh geez, really? I hate this. And then in that reactivity, just that clinch of Vedana. Here's the thought, really? And then the thought, I hate this. And then guess what else kicks in from there? If you have a reactive pattern, really, I hate this, you think it 1,000 times or less, it calcifies into a belief. People like this are nuts. Becomes a habit. Okay, I'll comply with this demand, but I'm not going to enjoy it. In fact, I'm going to resent this. So it moves from a belief into habit. I habitually respond that way. And then that becomes part of your character. Oh, I'm the kind of character who's going to go along with things I don't enjoy in order to keep the peace. And then from there, that unfolds into your destiny. With a habit like that, what kind of destiny do I create? So something arises energetically. There's a clench. There's a thought. There's a belief. There's habit. The habit forms your character. Your character becomes your destiny. Again, the bad news is it happens all the time. The good news is you can start to wake up and notice what's going on here. And this is part of this art of investigation and the art of inner listening. Now, to some degree, I was on to myself. I was aware of my kind of passive-aggressive, conflict-avoidant behavior. And I thought, well, maybe I should take a little deeper look at this. So again, my first reaction to again stop the world, I have a feeling I need to process this, was obligation. I don't have a choice. Resentment. Panic. And a sense of self-protection and self-preservation. And so it became an opportunity for me to look closer at my own reactivity. Well, am I an uncaring person? I don't think so. I naturally respond with compassion when people are hurting, but what is it about this? So a phrase used a lot by my wonderful wife, Tara, talks about doing the U-turn, which is where you look from the externals back inside. That great phrase, all you seek is found within. So would it be possible for me in that moment to move from blame and externalizing and bring all of my attention to what's happening inside? This investigation primarily is somatic, because it's that clench. You can find that clench. It lives on the inside, and it has a huge amount of information. So when you turn your attention to how your nervous system is holding an event or a thought or a belief, you can find some juicy stuff, and I certainly did. When I began to slow down and notice, what am I actually feeling on the inside? I could feel a tightness. I could feel a burning. And I could feel this, just a deep, deep sense of resentment. And underneath it, something kind of like hurt, something really kind of searing. Now, there are different ways you can explore when you're investigating. And certainly, you want to take all the time you can to really get in touch with the tendrils of how that experience lives on the inside. You can also ask yourself, how old is this? Like, how old is this clench here? And so as I sat with this, that question occurred to me, like, well, this really, really deep clench that I can feel from my sternum down deep into my gut, how old is this? And then suddenly I went, oh. You know, I think we can trace so much of our pain back to the imprints that we get early on. My mother is a well-meaning, high-spirited, artistic, thoughtful, and deeply wounded person, and who at different times would be very, very needy in her woundedness. And there I was, this sensitive little kid, and I'd feel her pain, and I would naturally respond to her pain, but I would be consumed by her pain at times, really overwhelmed. At some point, at a very, very young age, it felt like some steel curtain came down. And I later began to recognize that this was actually wisdom coming through, that I needed to separate myself from her pain and her anxiety, or I would be utterly consumed by it. And so from there, I developed a strategy for self-protection, which was externally to present smiles and nodding, but internally to be self-protective and focus more on self-preservation. We have different ways of surviving in life. For some of us, we learn fight. We learn how to use aggression, anger, judgment, blame to try to control what's happening. Others of us specialize in flight, kind of disassociation. And others, our specialty is freezing, kind of locking up. And again, there's an inherent wisdom in each of these. Fighting off an aggressor can be the most powerful thing you can do. If the conditions are right, running away, very strategic. And sometimes if you freeze up, you won't be noticed and the aggressor will move on. And so it becomes a very interesting reflection. How do you try to control the events in your life? When you feel hopeless, and when you feel fear, and you feel helpless, how does your nervous system kick in? Do you respond through aggression and anger and judgment and rage? Do you respond by withdrawing, by disassociating, by moving into more of a mental space and disconnecting from your body? Do you find yourself overwhelmed and shutting down and sort of spiraling down into a space where you feel locked in or helpless? When we begin to move from blame to deep self-reflection and ownership of the internal world, things can begin to shift. And in this situation, this person with her demands had nothing to do with me. My internal experience when I moved from blame moved me into a very, very powerful and painful reflection, which is the key, as far as I can tell, is to begin to attune to the unmet need. The first step is to name what's happening when you feel yourself caught in the surf. What is happening? Can you make room for it? Maybe you can't. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes you're traumatized. And there you can shift your attention, find another time. But if you can turn to it and have tea with it. Investigate it, sense its roots. And then this next step is to sense, if you can, open to loving presence. And maybe this is the hardest part. Accessing some way to call on kindness or compassion or empathy. That energy, that experience is sort of the lubrication that can help you to be with it and to let it go. But the doorway is the unmet need. And I remember in that moment, as I was processing, what does this person need right now? This person is upset. And I realized what she needed was to be listened to be respected, and not to be fixed, just to have a space where she could express. But I could also see that I didn't want to give that, because I was feeling like I was being emotionally manipulated. So my response was, well, no, she needs to be punished. She needs to be ignored so she can learn not to do this to me. But under that was realizing, well, I'm feeling a lot too. I'm actually feeling angry. I'm feeling manipulated. I need to be listened to, and I needed to be respected as well. And I remember in that moment, of like, what I need is someone to turn to me and listen to me. I remember asking myself, I don't trust that she could even do that. Is it possible I could just do that for myself right now? And so I explored, could I be kind to this old feeling of feeling controlled and manipulated? Can I bring a little kindness to it? And as I sat there, I could begin to feel a shift. What felt tight began to kind of loosen up a little bit. when I could trace that back, my reactivity back to that really primal sense of not just feeling overwhelmed by another person's need, but even deeper than that, my own anger that someone wasn't there for me. That recognition just sort of opened my world up a little bit. It widened my world. Now, way back when, I used to make a joke back then about these events because they happen on a regular basis. It's a little bit mean. But when there would be this event of a rising and upset and we need to stop and I need to talk about this, I would say, surf's up. Get on your board. Let's ride this one out. And while there's a little meanness in there, there's some wisdom in there too. Hey, the surf's up. Can I ride the waves here? And what I found was, because I had taken that time to move from my reactivity and to do that U-turn and to really deeply, intimately reflect, how does this live on the inside? And I could begin to bring a little bit of loving presence to that. In that presence for myself, it was actually kind of easy to be present for her. And so I could let her know that I could hear her, that I could mirror her words back to her so she knew that I was listening. When I began to sense that she had an unmet need here, and if I could language into that a little bit, well, that weather system was over pretty quickly. And to be clear, this person was gifted with an incredible sensitivity and insight. She was processing really deep trauma in her life, and she had an incredible capacity for great compassion and generosity, and she became an incredible teacher for me. The courage to really stop and recognize when something was between her and feeling good, and to really name it. And this really points toward the art, really the art of responding with loving presence. When something arises, to sense, can I make room for this? Can I intimately, deeply be with it? Move from blame to begin to sense what I'm needing here, what I'm hoping for, what I'm wanting that isn't happening, and to feel the intensity of that wanting. Really, really, really helpful. So powerful. I just lost my light. There is a beautiful tradition, something that's called feeding your demons, where when you sense an energy or a demon arising, you get in touch with it, you get in touch with the unmet need, and then you feed that demon what it needs until it's satisfied. It's usually the last thing you want to offer it. And just as with my primary relationship with my mom and with people who have strong emotional needs, there's this sense of, if I give an inch, she'll take a mile. But by feeding that demon, by being with it, by sensing what it needs and realizing the wound of self-protection, that it just wasn't true. So if you like, let's do a brief reflection. And you might like to just reflect on these steps. And you can close your eyes. We'll take just a few minutes for this reflection. And you might like to slow down and deepen your breath. And you might take a moment just to sense, is there somewhere in your life where there's just a lot of surf going on? Any places where you feel, or a place where you feel challenged, or maybe a little bit out of control, And over the next few breaths, just sense if you can reflect on one particular issue you might like to investigate here. And if you would, you can begin to just imagine or recreate this, draw this a little bit closer, as we often do here. Can you create a visual representation of a particular issue in your life right now? A still image or a moving image. Can you kind of replay it in your mind's eye? Are there any sounds or words or tone of voice that you connect with this? And can you begin to sense what it's like on the inside? How does your nervous system respond to this? Can you have a sense of the clench? And before we continue, you might ask yourself, is it okay to be with this? And if it isn't, you might just put it aside. Another time when the conditions are better. Let it know your intention is to be with it. And you might sense another issue. But if you do have a sense that you can be with it, just sense what it's like just to say yes to this. I'm going to make room for this. And again, sensing the breath, you might explore some of the following questions. I'll give you a little bit of space to explore. When you think about this situation, what is it like on the inside? What is it like at its worst, at its most chronic? Can you locate that? You might bring your hand to wherever you feel it the most chronic. Or you might imagine if you could find a word or two as if you were describing it to another person. How would you describe it? This clench, is there a sense of how old it is? How far back can you trace this feeling inside? Is it possible to feel or imagine the unmet need? What are you wanting? What are you hoping for? What is this need right now? And if you were to offer it, what does that feel like inside? What might move or shift or change? If you were to hold this in some kind of loving presence, empathy, compassion, kindness, what do you feel? What do you notice? Reflecting on the following question, as you sense any way this may have moved or shifted or changed as you've been with it for these minutes. When you think about this situation now, what advice do you have to give yourself? And if you were to do that, not perfectly, not all the time, but if you were to incline your awareness in that direction, what would that feel like? What would that be like? What would you need to cultivate a different outcome as you surf these waves? And now you might let go of all technique. Just take a few moments just to pause and just to sense anything that may have shifted in this reflection. If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes or feel free to remain with them closed with just a few minutes left. So the truth is, we're in the surf all the time. Things happen, we react, and learning how to surf makes a big difference. If you might imagine that everything in life that comes your way is perfectly designed for you to become more whole and more alive. Just imagine that. If that was true, and everything that arises is perfectly designed for you to become more whole and more alive. It's an interesting thing to explore because it might be true. There are lots of little waves that show up, the little irritations, the little desires, all of that. Sometimes we get hit with big ones. A good friend of mine just recently lost his dog of 14 years. And he told me what it was like. He said, any suggestions? I said, yeah. Ride the grief wave. I lost my dog of 15 years, quite a while ago. And it just happened to be while I was on a meditation retreat. I was leading a meditation retreat. I kind of zipped home to be there on his in his transition, and then right back to the retreat. And so hours and hours and hours and hours a day in silence. And I could feel these grief waves that would just come out of nowhere. And my intention was ride the wave until you can't find it. That is to say, stay on that surf of sensation and feeling until it's simply not there. I was astounded. The intensity of those waves. But because I stayed on them, I was shocked at how quickly I was moving more and more into gratitude and appreciation and less of the clench. Certainly not perfect, certainly not permanent. But it was a profound teaching for me. When there's a wave, can I stay on the wave? And sometimes on the big waves, you need help. And it's really helpful to get that help because it will increase your capacity to be with waves in the future. The more you learn how to ride the waves, the more you learn to call on clear seeing and compassion, the more alive you'll be in your life. I had a conversation with Tsoknyi Rinpoche doing a couple of retreats with him, and I remember asking him, if I keep doing these techniques, what can I expect? His answer so surprised me. He looked at me and he said, confidence. You will develop confidence that you can be with anything. And I think there's so much wisdom in that. You are going to be beset by all kinds of surf, and you're not going to have any control over the surf. But you do have the capacity to ride the waves, to sense how they might guide you into something unfelt and unseen. The more you get comfortable with discomfort and embrace opportunities as growth experiences, the more alive you'll feel. And this practice of recognizing, allowing, investigating, nourishing what you find with loving presence, so profound. We've explored a little bit with the 7 factors of awakening, of calling on your capacity for non-judging awareness, to view what's happening without judgment, your capacity to investigate what's there, to find kind of the joy in discovery, your capacity to both relax and pay attention, your capacity to allow. These are part of the elements that allow you to be there. So I'd like to close with a short reading on, guess what, surfing. If you like, you can close your eyes. Ride the wave is a motto I live by, stolen from a dear friend. Ride the wave. When it all gets to be too much, when it's a decision of panic, to run or to die, just ride it out. Wait for everything to settle. When you can come down from whatever overwhelmed you, from whatever gripped you with fear, you begin to see the beauty. The pale sun rising through the fog on an early morning in May. Life gets too intense sometimes. Focus is lost. Reality weaved with lies to set your mind ablaze with terror, burning pretty hopes and dreams into oblivion. It's easy to lose balance and fall into the endless dark ocean, exhausted from trying to swim above the surface. But surrender. Let go. Sit on top of the closest floating object. Breathe. Ride the wave. Eventually, you'll be pushed ashore by the very thing that caused your struggle. You will learn to love the ocean again. You will see that the moon is in the dark and the sun is in the dark. But together they glow for eternity. They are best friends in the black sky. Ride the wave of whatever the universe has sent you in echoing vibrations to you. You made this choice. Ride the wave of the galaxy. Remember, you are your soul, and your soul is free. It might take just a few moments. Notice the quality of presence right now. And you might sense your capacity to ride all the waves as they come and go, to call on your capacity to see clearly, to call on your capacity to cultivate this heart that can hold anything and everything. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. It's great to share these practices with you. May you surf all the waves in your life with joy and with equanimity, and may they open you to more and more possibility in your life. Thank you so much.